Today I am going to discuss about the anatomy and physiology for the GNM first year. So in this there is a unit 6, that is respiratory system. So in this respiratory system, till that we have seen about the anatomy of the respiratory system. So today we are going to discuss about the physiology of the respiration. So physiology of the respiration, first the main function of the lungs is, the main function of the respiratory system, there is a exchange of gases and oxygen and the carbon dioxide. So the main function of the respiratory system, it is the expiration and the inspiration. The gas exchanges can be occur between the lungs and the atmosphere. So there is a exchange of oxygen and the carbon dioxide between the lungs and the atmosphere. So the main function of this respiratory system is the exchange of gases between the lungs and the atmosphere, that is oxygen and the carbon dioxide. So the main function of the respiratory system, inspiration and the expiration. So it is a physiology of respiration. So in this physiology of respiration, there is a two stages. So first one is external respiration and the internal respiration. So external respiration also called as pulmonary respiration, and internal respiration also called as, there is a cellular respiration. So cellular respiration, external respiration also called as pulmonary respiration, and next one is internal respiration. So internal respiration also called as cellular respiration. So there is a two stages included in the physiology of respiration. There is a external respiration and the internal respiration. So external respiration also called as pulmonary respiration, and internal respiration also called as cellular respiration. And first we will discuss about the external respiration. So external respiration, during the external respiration, oxygen enters and the carbon dioxide leaves the blood in the lungs. So during the external respiration, the oxygen can be enters into the lung, and there is a carbon dioxide can be leaves that blood can be present in the lungs. So the carbon dioxide can be released by the lungs into the blood. So there is a external respiration. So there is a external respiration. During the external respiration, oxygen can be enter into the lung and the carbon dioxide can be released by the lungs into the blood. So it is the external respiration. So the gas exchange of gases can be occur by the diffusion. In this external respiration, the gas exchanges can be occur by the diffusion. So the diffusion means there is a passage of fluid or gases can be from higher concentration to lower concentration. So diffusion means there is a passage of fluids or gases from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. So it is called as diffusion. So in this external respiration, there is an exchange of gases occur by the diffusion. So the gas exchanges can be occur by the diffusion between the in this external respiration, the gases exchange can be occur by the diffusion between the alveoli and the blood in the alveolar capillaries. So capillaries means it is a branch of blood vessels, and the capillaries can be connect the arteries and the veins. So there is a gas exchange can be occur between the blood and the between the alveoli and the blood in the alveolar capillaries. So the diffusion can be occur between the alveoli and blood in the alveolar capillaries. So there is a external respiration. So during the external respiration, the gas exchange can be occur. External respiration, oxygen can be enters and the carbon dioxide can be released by the lungs into the blood. So in this there is a external respiration. Exchange of gases can be occur by the diffusion between the alveoli and blood in the alveolar capillaries. And diffusion means there is a passage of fluids and the gases from the higher concentration to the lower concentration, and it is about the external respiration. Next, internal respiration. Internal respiration, there is a exchange of gases takes place by means of oxygen enters into the body cells and the carbon dioxide leaves the body cells. So the internal respiration can be takes place, and by the means oxygen can be enter into the body cells and carbon dioxide leaves the body cells. So from the lungs the carbon dioxide can be released into the cells blood, and the blood and consists of cells, and the cells can be release the carbon dioxide. So internal respiration, there is a enters into the body cells and leaves the carbon dioxide by the body cells. It is about the internal respiration, and there is an exchange of gases by the diffusion between the blood and the blood in the capillaries and the body cells. So the diffusion can be occur between the blood in the capillaries and the body cells. So there is a diffusion can be occur between the capillaries and the body cells. So from the gas exchange can be occur between the capillaries. So from the capillaries to body cells the passage of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So in this external respiration there is a diffusion between the exchange of gases between the alveoli and the blood in the alveolar capillaries, and in the internal respiration there is a diffusion can be occur between the blood in the capillaries and the body cells. So it is about the external respiration and the internal respiration. Next, ventilation. So ventilation, it is during inspiration chest wall become expand. In this ventilation there is a process of inspiration and the expiration, and ventilation during the inspiration the chest wall become expand. So while inhaling the air the chest wall become expand, and there is a intrapulmonary pressure become falls. So intrapulmonary pressure means it is nothing but the pressure between the pleura. So the pleural cavity there is a fluid can be present. So in this pleural cavity there is a fluid can be present. So because of this there is a chest wall can be expanded during the inspiration. So because of the expanding of the chest wall there is a pulmonary pressure can be falls. So because of the expansion of the chest wall there is a pulmonary pressure can be decreased. So pulmonary pressure means there is a pressure can be occur in the pleural cavity. So the pressure present in the pulmonary cavity called as pulmonary pressure. So because of the expansion of the chest wall there is a pulmonary pressure become decreased, and the air from atmosphere enters the lung. So during the inspiration the air can be enter into the lungs from the atmosphere. So the air can be inspired by the from the atmosphere into the lungs. So from the atmosphere the air can be enter into the lung. And next one is during the expiration the chest wall lungs become shrink. So during the expiration chest wall and the lungs become contract. So because of the contraction there is a intrapulmonary pressure can be rises. So because of the contraction of the lungs and the chest wall there is a pressure which are present in the pleural cavity, it can be increased and air is forced to leave the lung. So because of the pulmonary pressure increases and there is a chest wall and the lungs become contract, and because of the contraction air can be released by the lungs. So very forcefully the lungs can be released the air. So it is about the expiration. Ventilation includes the expiration and the inspiration. So during the inspiration there is a chest wall become expands, and because of the expansion of the chest wall there is a intrapulmonary pressure becomes decreased. So because of the decrease in the pulmonary pressure, the atmosphere of the air from the atmosphere can be enter into the lungs, and during the expiration there is a chest wall and lungs become contract. So because of the contraction of the lungs and the chest wall there is a pulmonary pressure can be rises, and there is a lungs can be very forcefully leaves the air. So it is about the expiration and inspiration can be involved in the ventilation. So it is about the physiology of the respiration. And next there is a mechanism of ventilation. So in this mechanism of ventilation, so next one is mechanism of ventilation. So in this mechanism of ventilation there are the some muscles can be involved in the mechanism of ventilation. So it is called muscles of inspiration. So the muscles can be involved in the inspiration, so it is called as inspiratory muscles, and which when contract and cause expansion of the thoracic cage in every diameter. So there is a because of the during the inspiration the muscles can be contract and cause the expansion of the thoracic cage. So there is a because of the expansion of the thoracic cage there is a increase in the every diameter. So the diameter between the thoracic cage and the lungs. So there is a some muscles can be involved in the inspiration, and during this inspiration the muscles become contract and it causes the expansion of the thoracic cage, and because of the thoracic cage expansion there is a increase in the diameter. So between the lungs and the thoracic cage the diameter can be increased, and next it leads to the parietal pleura of the lung is attached with the inner sides of the chest wall. So the parietal pleura means there is a outer layer of the lungs. So the parietal pleura means the outer layer which covers the lungs. So the outer layer of the lungs it is called as parietal pleura. So parietal pleura of the lung is attached with the inner sides of the chest wall. So the parietal pleura can be attached to the inner side of the chest wall. So when the chest wall expands and the parietal pleura also tries to move. So when the parietal pleura become parietal pleura moves, and there is a when the chest wall become expand the parietal pleura also tries to move. So the parietal pleura can be parietal pleura of the lung is attached with the inner side of the chest wall, and when the chest wall expanded there is the parietal pleura also tries to move. So when the chest wall become expanded the parietal pleura also tries to move, and it leads to the visceral pleura is strongly attached with the lung surface. So the visceral pleura means inner layer of the lungs, so which covers the lungs. So the visceral pleura is strongly attached with the lung surface. So very closely, very strongly it can be attached to the lung surface. So it is called visceral pleura. So the inner layer of the lung called inner layer which covers the lung surface, and it is called as visceral pleura, and between the visceral and the parietal pleura there is a thin layer of fluid. So there is a between the visceral pleura and the parietal pleura there is a presence of fluid. So it is become thin layer of fluid, and when the chest wall expand the visceral pleura also moves and tries to drag the lungs. So when the chest wall become expand there is a visceral pleura also become tries to move and drag the lungs. So the visceral pleura also tries to pull the lungs during the inspiration. The visceral pleura is strongly attached with the lung surface, and between the visceral and the parietal pleura there is a thin layer of fluid. So when the chest wall becomes expand, the visceral pleura also moves and tries to drag the lungs. So the visceral pleura tries to pull the lungs during the inspiration. And there is a next one is this expansion of the lung causes dilatation the air passage, airway tube and alveoli system. So because of the expansion of the chest wall, because of the expansion of the lung and causes the dilatation of air tube. So dilatation of airway tube and the alveoli system. So there is a dilatation means it become dilate means enlarge, it can be stretchable. So the expansion of the lung causes dilatation of the airway tube, it becomes stretchable or it can be enlarged. So the airway tube become enlarged and the alveoli system also become dilate. So alveoli, it is nothing but tip of the, it is a branch of the, it is a tip of the branchial tubes, it is called as alveoli. So the alveolar system and the airway tube can be dilated because of the expansion of the chest wall. So next it leads to the airway tube is in the direct communication with the external atmosphere. So airway tube can be directly attached to the external atmosphere. So air can be enter into the lungs and this can be continuous fill until intrapulmonary pressures becomes equal to the extra atmosphere pressure. So there is a airway tube is connected with the directly atmosphere and with the air can be enter into the lung. So but it can be directly connected to the external atmosphere. So by this during the inhalation the air can be enter into the lungs from the atmosphere. So there is a enter into the lungs and this can be continuous until there is a intrapulmonary pressure becomes equal to the external atmosphere pressure. So during the inspiration the extrapulmonary pressure can be false. So because of this and there is a external atmosphere and it can be equal to the intrapulmonary pressure during the inspiration. So and next it leads to the during expiration intrapulmonary pressure become increase. So during the expiration there is a intrapulmonary pressure can be increased. So intrapulmonary pressure, there is a pressure between the pleural cavity. So pleura and there is a expiration can be occur, intrapulmonary pressure increases and the lungs leaves the air and it can be there is a until intrapulmonary pressure becomes equal to the external atmospheric pressure. So there is a during expiration intrapulmonary pressure become increase and the lungs can be leaves the air. So this process can be continuous up to the intrapulmonary pressure becomes normal to the become equal to the external atmospheric pressure. So it is about the mechanism of ventilation. It includes the some of the muscles can be involved in the inspiration and there is a which contract and causes the expansion of the thoracic cage in every diameter. So there is a because of the muscles can be involved in the inspiration, because of the contraction of the muscles there is a expansion of the thoracic cage in every diameter. So next it leads to the parietal pleura of the lung is attached with the inner sides of the chest wall. So parietal pleura, it is nothing but outer layer of the lungs. It can be attached to the inner side of the chest wall. And when the chest wall expands and the parietal pleura also tries to move. So if the chest wall become expanded, the parietal pleura also move. And there is a visceral pleura, it is inner layer of the lung and there is a strongly attached with the lung surface. So the visceral pleura can be strongly attached to the visceral pleura, and between the visceral and the parietal pleura there is a thin layer of fluid. So between the visceral pleura and the parietal pleura the fluid can be present. So there is a, when the chest wall expands, the visceral pleura also moves and tries to drag the lungs. So if the when the chest wall become expand, the visceral pleura also tries to move and it can be pull the lungs, and this expansion of the lung causes dilatation of the airway tube and the alveoli system. So because of the expansion of the chest wall or the lungs, and it can be caused the dilatation of the airway tube and the alveoli. Dilatation is nothing but there is an enlargement of the airway tube or the alveoli system, and it leads to the airway tube is in the direct communication which in the external atmosphere. So there is a during the inspiration the air is enter into the lung, and because of during the inspiration the intrapulmonary pressure become false. So there is a become false, and there is a, it continues up to the intrapulmonary pressure become equal to the external atmospheric pressure. So it is about the inspiration, and during the expiration there is a intrapulmonary pressure can be increased and the lungs can be leave the air. So there is a, it can be continuous, the intrapulmonary pressure become equal to the external atmospheric pressure. So it is about the expiration. So it completes the physiology of the respiration and the mechanism of ventilation. Thank you.